Hello everyone, it's me Aubrey. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to my space, a place where I love to share my knowledge and wisdom with love to all of you. So as you can see, we are in my living room in the area where I usually sit down to have deeper, more personal conversations. I invite you into this space to have an important conversation with me today. So before we dive into conversation today, I do want to give a trigger warning that this video is about miscarriage, abortion, pregnancy loss. So if any of those terms are triggering to you at this current moment, I invite you to exit out of the video and come back a little bit later when your mind, body, and spirit are ready to receive this information. This morning I woke up and I was scrolling on TikTok and I seen like a funny video about having a doula. And I went on like a rampage of reminiscing on the ways in which I have been integral in helping to facilitate souls into the earthly realm through my work as a doula. So if you did not know, I am a labor and postpartum doula, and I'm also a trained lactation specialist. All of these terms mean that I enjoy birth and I also enjoy supporting women along the womanhood continuum. So whether that's fertility support, conception, periods, breastfeeding, whatever a woman is in her life, I show up to be a friend in need. Within this work and within reminiscing today, it really made me stop to pause that oftentimes when we talk about birth, when we talk about labor, when we talk about motherhood, we talk about all of the bells and whistles. But as a doula, I do have to be realistic and say that one, birth is very miraculous. And sometimes within birth, within pregnancy, things happen that are out of our control. And we live in a society where womanhood is associated with our ability to, bring forth life, to be a mother, to get pregnant, to have children, to be nurturing, all of these things. And so when we find ourselves in situations such as pregnancy loss or choosing not to continue on with a pregnancy, we can often feel that that is a siloed experience because we're not seeing it as much on the mainstream. So my invitation for you today is to just hear this conversation about pregnancy loss. And if you have experienced this, know that you aren't alone. So I want to spend most of our time today talking about what is a miscarriage, what you can expect during a miscarriage, and then want to spend majority of our conversations around how you can nurture yourself back to health after pregnancy loss. I will be having this conversation not from my own perspective, but from a perspective as a doula, but because this is an experience that I've had as well, I will be inserting some of my nuggets around what I went through as well. What is a miscarriage? A miscarriage is when there is a spontaneous loss of pregnancy between conception and about 20 weeks. This could happen for a number of reasons, and I invite you all not to get boggled down on the why. I will say this throughout this video hundreds of times. Birth is miraculous. Birth is such a glorious thing, and we have to treat it as such. And with that, sometimes things just happen and that spirit, that soul decides not to come forth into the earthly realm. There can be environmental factors, there are spiritual factors, there are just genetic factors, and some factors we just don't even have names. The Google definition of a miscarriage is the unexpected loss of a pregnancy before the 20th week of gestation, also known as a spontaneous abortion. I really want y'all to hone in on that term spontaneous, because spontaneous in a sense means that we really don't have control. So if you are going through this and you feel like it's your fault, or you did something wrong, or you didn't take the right prenatal, I just want you to know that things happen. So I do want to talk about two different types of miscarriages today. The first is the normal miscarriage that we see when the body recognizes that the pregnancy is no longer viable. So oftentimes you'll experience like extreme cramping, bleeding, passing of clots. Maybe you'll have some type of like brown discharge, but I invite you that if you are experiencing any of those things right now to always go get checked. 9 times out of 10 your primary care physician can monitor the pregnancy to see if you are at a point of miscarriage. When you start to see those signs, the difference between a pregnancy going on to be normal versus a miscarriage is that you'll see more consistently like an increase of some of those signs and symptoms. So an increase of blood flow, an increase of severe cramping, an increase of past clots. Your pregnancy test may no longer pick up on some of those hormones. So that is in essence like what we see when the body recognizes that the pregnancy isn't viable and you pass the embryo. The other type of miscarriage is what is known as a miscarriage. I had really no idea about this, maybe like a slight idea until I experienced it myself. But a miscarriage is when your body doesn't recognize that the pregnancy isn't viable and it does not give you any of those signs and symptoms, but the embryo does not continue to develop. So with a miscarriage, you may see a gestational sac, your yolk sac, but you may not see a fetal pole. Or maybe as you continue to get ultrasounds and go to doctor visits, that fetal pole does not continue to develop. And so you really find yourself having like a stalled pregnancy at a certain point and your body doesn't recognize it, so you don't go on to actually pass it. And so the reason why I want to differentiate those two is because they require different medical interventions. So with a normal miscarriage where your body recognizes that the pregnancy is no longer viable and it passes the yolk sac and all of the pregnancy, usually you're good to go for a checkup after a few weeks. Your doctor, your primary care physician, your OBGYN will continue to monitor you. Maybe they'll schedule a follow-up ultrasound just to make sure that your body has past all of the pregnancy matter. But 9 times out of 10, that is an experience that is more siloed inside of the home. So knowing that if you are going through a typical miscarriage, then I do want you to know that that's something that you'll probably experience at home. And as much as you want your OBGYN to give you information to support you, it's just something that you will have to kind of flow through in the comfort of your own home. With a miscarriage, that requires a different level of support. It does require more support and help from your OBGYN. So what will typically happen is that you will go to get an ultrasound. After the OBGYN does the ultrasound to ensure that the pregnancy isn't progressing and that there are no medical interventions that will support the continuation of the pregnancy, they will recommend 2 things. The first is a DNC and the second one is a medication to help the body to pass the pregnancy. So the name of the medication that's typically prescribed is misoprostol, probably not saying that right. So that is similar to an abortion pill. This medication will help your uterus to contract to help you pass the pregnancy. This medication is also what's typically prescribed or administered when you decide to have an abortion as well. So what it does is just makes the uterus contract, open up so that your body can pass on the pregnancy. That process is still typically done in the comfort of your own home. So you may experience heavy cramping, heavy bleeding. It typically takes a few hours for the medication to kick in, but you may feel nauseous. And this experience does typically go on for a few days. So you will be provided the medication, you'll take the medication. By the end of the night, you may start to feel cramping. By the next day, your body will start to pass the, the yolk sac and whatever other pregnancy matter is within the uterus. And this may go on for a few days. And so I want to bring this to your attention because if you are somebody who cannot deal with heavy bleeding or you don't want to experience this for a prolonged period of time, then the second option, which is a DNC surgery, may be beneficial to you. So I'll put the medical term for DNC on the screen. DNC is a surgical procedure in which you'll go into the hospital and your medical team will do a procedure that dilates the uterus, and they will go in and remove the pregnancy tissue, clear the pregnancy for you. So the DNC procedure typically is like over the span of a few hours, so it would just be like a one-day thing at the hospital. You'll go in, they'll get you set up with some anxiety and pain medication, and you will be kind of loopy during the experience, but You can choose whether or not you want to have full anesthesia or local anesthesia. Because the procedure goes so fast, I think local anesthesia is fine. You really don't feel anything, maybe like some slight cramping and pulling, but you typically have a nurse beside you, somebody who is very knowledgeable, helpful, caring, and loving. You can also have your support person, your partner, in the next room to, you know, take care of you right after that procedure. But if you are maybe further along in your pregnancy and you don't want to experience it at all, then you can go for full anesthesia. I am going to just welcome any questions that you all have about the D&C procedure, but I won't spend a lot of the time there. Just note that, you know, there's 2 different types of miscarriages. There are 2 different types of ways to manage a miscarriage. You can either do a medical pill or a medical intervention called a D&C, which requires a little bit more intervention from your primary care physician, from your doctors. With the D&C, typically the recovery is over the span of a week. You may feel a little bit of uterine contractions and cramping afterwards, but they typically do subside within a day. The biggest thing that I would recommend is that you do drink warm tea, because you may have trouble pooping, and once those medications wear off, yeah, that's just another, we'll stop there. And I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm just like, it's just all of this, like I said, it's just so crazy, the things that women go through. And so now that we have talked a little bit about what is a miscarriage, what is a miscarriage, and the procedures that can help your body to pass the pregnancy, let's start to talk about recovery. So recovery for a miscarriage in general, very umbrella, looks like a lot of rest, looks like a lot of grace, looks like a lot of mental, physical, spiritual support. A lot of this does have to do with our ego. We have to sit in a space and be in complete surrender to an experience that as a woman we feel like we should have so much control over. So if you are experiencing this, I invite you to surrender to the love that is around you. So when you are in a recovery space, either from the D&C or maybe you are experiencing a miscarriage at home by yourself, surrender to the process, surrender to the pain, surrender to the grief. Because it is the only way that you are going to move out of that season in your life. If you try to rush it, if you try to get out, if you try to bury the pain, it is going to come back, because you have essentially lost a part of you. And I do want to name that, temporarily lost. So my first piece of advice is just to surrender. And a lot of surrender looks like ensuring that you have the family and support that you need. Don't be afraid to have conversations with people and let them know that the pregnancy did not progress or that you've had a miscarriage. Allow your village to know so that they can show up for you, whether that's in the form of flowers, a meal train, some extra money so you can take some time off of work. Just allow your community to be there for you. I also recommend during this time just having a heating pad, all of the essentials, a heating pad, ice packs, period panties. Y'all, do not try to use pads or tampons during this time. You actually can't use tampons, but you really do want something that's like big and comfortable and that can hold the blood if there are clotting or if you're experiencing heavy bleeding. So I like to get the disposable period panties that kind of look like the pants. I recommend those. A heating pad that gets really hot would be beneficial. Warm teas, a tea like chamomile or lemon balm, that's also going to help with the anxiety, because in reality there are a lot of hormones that your body produces at pregnancy, and they don't just miraculously go away because you have had a miscarriage or you've had a D&C. So you will still be feeling a lot of that energetic pull, though, that hormonal pull. And I just invite you to, you know, utilize like, you know, your herbal teas and other remedies. having warm foods like soups and teas. They'll help your body to pass the blood. They'll be warming. They'll help your energy reset, and they will also help your hormones to go through any shifts that they may have to during that process. Later on down the line, about a month after you have the miscarriage, once the bleeding stops, I do recommend a yoni steam, and I also recommend following up with your primary care physician to ensure that all of the tissue has been expelled from the body. The two final things that I want to talk about in the recovery process is, one, having some type of external therapy support, but also having some type of spiritual and religious support as well. So when it comes to miscarriage, like I said, there's no cut corner way in which your recovery will manifest itself. If you are feeling like you're struggling to make sense of this, I do recommend seeking therapy, and maybe there is some type of medication that you may need to just balance yourself out mentally, whether that's like anti-anxiety medication or antidepressants. That may be something that you need for the short term. And I also think that being in a space where you can talk to somebody fluidly, so whether that is, you know, a professional therapist or even maybe a doula, would be great at this time. Family support and external support are two different things, and sometimes we can be a little bit more vulnerable if we're talking to somebody like a therapist or a doula. The final thing that I want to hone in on, all of you all know that I am very spiritual and I am, you know, on a religious journey right now. So it would be remiss of me not to say that pregnancy loss is a spiritual thing, and you have to treat it as such. One of the things that you have to understand about God and our being here is that everything is purposeful and everything comes full circle. And so with that, you have to have faith in your heart that what happens for you happened for a reason, and that the time just was not right. I know that that just sounds so minuscule. It sounds so just simple for such a complex life event, but it was not the right time. You may find out why it wasn't the right time in the moment. You may not find out why it wasn't the right time 10 years from now. But have faith that God knows your heart, God knows your wants, God knows your desires, and that God will always bring forth what it is that you need in divine timing. I also have worked with babies for a long time, and I recognize babies to be some of the most spiritual beings that we will ever have the chance to meet. Sometimes the spirit is just not ready to come to earthside, and a lot of that, you know, spiritual language may go through one ear and out another. But for those who resonate with this message, I just want you to know that the spirit is always going to return. You are going to see that in another moment if you choose to conceive, or you may, you know, come across someone who has another little baby, or, you know, someone in a few years, and you're like, this spirit feels so connected to me. I don't know why. That could be the why. The other thing that is important with any type of pregnancy loss is honoring that spirit. So if you want to get like a little ring that says like Mom of an Angel, or like a little keychain, or maybe like a memory box to hold your sonograms and any type of like birth pictures that you have, I recommend doing so. So just treat this as a spiritual endeavor, and I promise you that it will help you in your recovery process. I've made it to the end of this very difficult video, and I hope that it wasn't too scattered for you all. A lot of these conversations I do want to dive deeper into, but I don't want to spend too much time for taking away from people who just want the general information. So if you have any specific questions that I can make a separate video about, please let me know. But I hope that this video was informative to you, and I just want you to know that if you are going through this, you are not alone. And if you need any type of support along your journey, or you have any questions about pregnancy loss, abortion, or miscarriage, then please feel free to reach out to me as a doula. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for being here. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment.
We've been dancing for so long under the stars. I feel that the grass will cut through.